was a time when Spotify felt alive. You'd open the app and every song you'd ever loved was right there. Fast, clean, simple. No clutter, no pressure, just music. Back then, Spotify was the future. It made the entire world of sound feel connected, like music finally belonged to everyone again. But now it feels different. Heavy, corporate, loud. The home screen looks like a billboard. There's a new button every month and a new price too. You'll scroll past podcasts you'll never listen to, AI DJs, audiobooks, videos, things no one asked for. Somewhere along the way, the app stopped being about music and started being about, well, everything else. People don't feel inspired when they open Spotify anymore. They feel tired. The company that once saved the music industry has turned into the thing we wanted saving from. This is the downfall of Spotify. Before the downfall though, in 2024, something big finally happened. Spotify turned a profit for the first time in its entire history. After almost 2 decades of losses, layoffs, and investor panic, the number finally went green. $1.14 billion in net income. A company that had once burned cash just to survive was suddenly the success story that Wall Street had always dreamed of it being. Stock prices shot up, and investors called it a turning point. Spotify had finally proven the model. Music streaming could finally make money. But behind that celebration was a quiet shift, the kind that changes a company forever. Because Spotify didn't turn a profit by growing music. It did it by cutting cost, raising prices, and squeezing more value out of the same experience. They laid off thousands of employees. They scaled back entire divisions. And they quietly backed away from their podcast empire after pouring hundreds of millions into it. But the price hikes just kept coming. $9.99 a month became $10.99, and then $11.99 depending on where you live. And meanwhile, the experience did not improve. If anything, it got worse.
Who at Spotify is responsible for the UI change? I just want to name. I just want to know who greenlit this, you super villain who wants to watch the world burn. You know how many times I tried to just go to my library and I keep trying to create a playlist because you added the new button in the bottom right corner? This is worse than whatever Pavlov did to those dogs. Okay?
The app that once felt simple, just a clean list of songs, now felt like an attention machine. There's videos playing in the background, podcast titles next to random talk shows, and algorithmic playlists that all look the same. But this is the version of Spotify that finally worked. Not the one that cared about artists, not the one that cared about music discovery. The one that cut enough corners to finally make shareholders happy. Profit at last. But at what cost? And what took so long for Spotify to finally turn a profit to begin with? Well, firstly, Spotify have had their share of legal problems. In 2017, Spotify faced a $1.6 billion lawsuit from Wixen Music Publishing, representing artists like Tom Petty and Stevie Nicks. The lawsuit alleged that Spotify had used thousands of songs without proper licensing or compensation. This case really highlighted the complexities of music right management in the streaming era. Secondly, Spotify was never designed like a normal tech company. Uber now owns cars, Netflix owns content, but Spotify, it rents everything. Every single song you stream, from Taylor Swift to that weird lo-fi remix, it comes with a royalty payment attached. Roughly 70% of every dollar Spotify makes goes straight to record labels and publishers. That means no matter how much they grow, the costs grow with them. When you stream more, they pay more. It's like running a restaurant where the supplier charges you for every bite the customer takes. And to make things worse, the record label holds all the power. They own the catalogs, the big hits, the artists. And Spotify can't negotiate too hard because if Universal or Sony pulled their music, the platform would collapse overnight. So Spotify spent years in this sort of middle ground. Too big to die, but too broke to actually win. And they tried everything to escape. Podcasts, audiobooks, exclusive content, live audio rooms, an attempt to find something that they owned. But it never worked. They even tried building their own studios and throwing millions at celebrity podcast deals, only to realize podcasts don't sell premium subscriptions. And music, that's not getting cheaper. And so by 2023, Spotify was bleeding money on every front. So the turnaround that finally came in 2024 wasn't magic, it was survival. Cut staff, kill projects, raise prices, shrink ambitions. That's how Spotify finally turned a profit. Not because it found a better way to serve its listeners, but because it found a cheaper way to survive. And as we all know from all of the various companies that I've covered on this channel, as soon as a company turns on their audience, that's when they quickly start to freefall. But once Spotify had finally hit that profitability, it doubled down on what had always worked, the algorithm. The algorithm is the invisible hand behind every playlist, every suggested for you, Every track you didn't pick but somehow ended up hearing anyway. That's the system that made Spotify addictive. It kept people listening without thinking, but it also broke something. Remember when discovery used to feel alive? You'd stumble onto a random song, fall in love with a band, maybe even change your taste. Now it's this weird, curated kind of deja vu. One listener said it best: I miss editorial playlists, yet they exist, but they keep recommending playlists for me that are just reshuffles of my own library with different songs by artists I already listened to. And that's the problem. Personalization has become isolation. Spotify keeps feeding you slightly different versions of the same thing. The algorithm isn't trying to expand your tastes, it's trying to keep you predictable, because predictability is profitable. When Spotify knows what you'll click next, it can push you towards content that keeps streams flowing and licensing costs low.
I think the root of the bad thing about Spotify is that they're not a music-focused company. They don't care about us. They don't care about music. They are a marketing company that decided that music was the cheapest way to become a more successful marketing company.
Yeah, and drive revenue.
100%.
It's not about art or culture or curiosity anymore. It's all about efficiency. And after years of this, people are starting to feel it. But the biggest change to Spotify isn't even something you see, it's what you hear. AI-generated music. It's quietly flooding the platform, and most people don't even realize it. Not playlists, not remixes, actual songs. Entire tracks made by algorithms trained on human artists. Fake names, fake album art, synthetic vocals that sound almost real.
Here's my prompt. Create a square avatar of a fictitious female alternative / indie singer and a name for her.
Wow, Sadie Winters.
Sadie Winters, okay. The song is about walking away from someone who never really saw her worth. Just going to create the song lyrics. And then hit create. Let's listen.
This is the world premiere.
I was paper, you were scissors, cut me out.
She's a good singer.
And the craziest part is most of it's coming from Spotify's own curated playlists. Spotify says it's about experimentation, about innovation in audio, but the incentive is obvious. AI tracks don't demand royalties, they don't complain about lower pay, they just loop forever. And for Spotify, that's a dream come true. Cheaper content, more streams, endless catalog growth. But for everyone else, it's a nightmare. The playlists that were once filled with real artists are now... This guy really loves interrupting my videos. All right, say hello to the camera. Playlists that were once filled with actual artists are now being replaced by these synthetic ones. The lines between human and machine creativity are now gone.
Spotify is partnering with a few big music groups to create what they're calling responsible artificial intelligence products. Several industry leaders will be part of it, including Sony Music, Universal, and Warner. Spotify says this will help artists and songwriters they represent while connecting them to fans.
And Spotify have also had their fair share of controversies. One of Spotify's biggest controversies didn't even come from music. It came from a podcast. In 2020, Spotify signed Joe Rogan to an exclusive deal reportedly worth around $200 million. A massive bet that podcasts would be the company's future. And for a while, it worked. Rogan's shows dominated the charts. But in 2022, things got messy. Critics accused Rogan's podcast of spreading COVID-19 misinformation, from vaccine skepticism to unverified treatments. And soon, old clips of Rogan using racial slurs resurfaced, adding fuel to the fire. Artists like Neil Young and John Mitchell pulled their music from Spotify in protest. And suddenly, the company found itself caught between two impossible sides: freedom of speech and platform responsibility. Spotify CEO Daniel Ek condemned Rogan's past language, but refused to remove his podcast entirely, saying Spotify shouldn't silence creators.
From Spotify saying, quote, "While I strongly condemn what Joe has said, and I agree with his decision to remove past episodes from our platform, I realize some will want more. And I want to make one point very clear. I do not believe silencing Joe is the answer."
This was a turning point. For the first time, Spotify wasn't just a music app. It was a media company deciding what voices to platform and what it meant to stay neutral. And also, from an artist's perspective, Spotify's revenue model isn't necessarily simple. It's not just more streams equal more money. Every stream generates a fraction of a cent for the artist, roughly 3 cents to 5 cents per play on average. And that money doesn't directly go to the artist. First, it's divided among the record label, the publisher, and anyone else holding rights. By the time it actually reaches the musician, the cut can be tiny. The system favors major labels, Big artists with huge catalogs get paid far more reliably than smaller or independent creators. Smaller artists often rely on touring, merch, or sponsorships just to make a living. Streaming alone rarely sustains them. And like I said before, when you factor in AI tracks, it's just expanding the royalty pool, leaving human artists with even less. For example, in 2014, Taylor Swift pulled her entire catalog from Spotify. Her reason? She said the streaming model didn't fairly compensate artists, especially for new albums. She wanted to control how her music was experienced and ensure her work was valued. And the move sparked a massive debate. Critics argued she was protecting her revenue. Fans and industry insiders debated whether streaming services like Spotify could ever pay artists fairly. Taylor Swift did bring her music back to Spotify in 2017, but the incident left a big mark and highlighted the core problem. Spotify can grow, turn a profit, and dominate the market, but the people creating the music that fuels it often feel shortchanged. But I want to hear what you think. Do you still use Spotify and love it, or have you moved over to like Apple Music? I personally still use Spotify, but it is noticeable how bad it has become. Leave your thoughts in the comments below and I will respond to as many as I can. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching and I will see you in the next one.